everyone, it's Cindy and welcome back to the channel. Now, I know for the last 2 weeks I have promised that I would be sharing my childhood home with all of you, and it is finally happening. I am very excited to finally have this build done. It was a bit daunting, if I am completely honest. I was really excited at the idea with growing together of being able to recreate this house and share it with you. And then I got started, and as you may have known from previous build videos, I have mentioned I do not feel like a very confident builder. I'm very confident with decorating. But anyway, I got there in the end. It took me a little longer than expected, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, to be honest. Anyway, let's give you some information about the build. So today I am building in Willow Creek. I think it worked really well just for this style of house. It's just very basic suburban. And this is on a 40 by 30 lot. If you want to place it on the exact same lot, it is the Garden Essence lot that is just behind the little community garden space. And even though this is supposed to kind of be like a starter home, or at least it was like for my parents, unfortunately with The Sims, it is rather expensive. So it will cost your Sims 95,697 simoleons, so you might want to help them out with the budget on that one. However, if you do enjoy this build and you want to add it to your game, it is available for download on the gallery. You can find it with my gallery ID or hashtag Hygge. That's HYGGEHAVEN. So this house, yeah, I grew up in this house. This is from the 1980s because I am not entirely young. I'm still young at heart and still really young, but not young. But I think we moved into this house when I was like 3 or 4. So it would have been at the start of the 80s. And we lived here until I was 12. And this is a semi-detached house. And it's also a split level house. So that was kind of interesting. What I have done, I haven't added the second half of the house yet. Right now I'm only working on the half of the house that was ours. We lived on the left-hand side from this perspective, and then we had neighbors. Here we go. I'm adding the extra half now. We had neighbors on the other half. So what I decided to do was that I would do both sides of the semi-detached, but I would only furnish the half that we lived in. And I've left the neighbor's half as a shell. So if you want to download this and furnish that half and have two families living in here, you could do that. If you want to just leave the other half empty, that's an option. If you want to just delete the second half, then you could do that as well. So that's how I've kind of set the build up. For the second neighbor's half, I have not put a basement in, but I did put a basement in on this one. I like never use basements, and I'm so excited that I did opt to put the basement in our old house, because right when I got to the point of being ready to furnish the basement, they announced the basement treasures kit, and I was like, yes! I can totally use that. So I was super excited, and I have used that kit, so it worked out. But we're just working on finishing up the exterior here. We do have bay windows. You can see that I have put those placeholders in, which I've now removed. I actually had to go back onto Google Maps and take a look at what the house looks like today because I couldn't entirely remember all of the details. And I'm really glad that I did, because I realized the bay windows I had used were not really accurate. So the ones that I've built with the walls are much more accurate to real life. I also discovered that I did not remember the roofing or the outside exterior like wall coverings. So it was useful to go back onto Google Maps and check that out. So here I am doing the roofing right now. The roofing was a bit of a struggle. I cut out so much footage, and you might be wondering, why, Cindy? It looks very simple here, and it was, but it was and it wasn't. Let's just say that and leave it at that. It was and it wasn't. But anyway, this pretty much works. I also had forgotten that we had chimneys, which should seem obvious that a house should have some sort of chimneys for ventilation, but I've added those in. And the exterior had a combination of a brown brick, which is the part I didn't remember, and the white siding. I remembered the white siding, and I remembered that we had a blue front door, which I will also be swapping out those doors to larger ones very shortly, because I am using the medium wall height here because we have the split leveling At the back of the house, the medium wall height was rather necessary to ensure that we still had windows at an appropriate height. So here we are just fencing in the backyard. Now, unfortunately, despite the fact that this is a 40 by 30 size lot, which should be plenty of space, it was not actually. Obviously, there are differences in scaling real life items to a game and to still be able to have things be functional in game if you want to use this house in order to play with your Sims. So the house itself is much larger in the game than it was in real life. Certainly in real life, it was a very small, modest house. And as you can see from the outside, it's not impressive looking. It's not impressive looking in real life, and that is modeled in the game. But, what can I say? It was the 80s. It was a small suburban kind of starter house, and I've tried to reflect that. So it's not going to have maybe the wow feature of a lot of houses that you're going to see on the gallery, but that's okay. Not every house has to have the wow factor. And you might be wondering what I'm doing here, but here on the edge of our driveway, we had 4 lilac bushes. And sadly, we don't have lilac bushes in The Sims. So I've scaled down these blossoming cherry trees to function kind of as lilacs. And we also have this little side garden area. The trim that I've used, I've put that there because we actually had around this little garden area old railway ties, which I would not recommend because if you've never seen an actual railway tie, say that 4 times fast, they're very greasy. They are soaked in grease for whatever reason, and they were kind of a nightmare when you were trying to garden anything because you'd end up with grease all over your clothes. And my mother was forever telling me to stay away from them because she didn't want grease on my clothes that she couldn't get out. So I'm just adding in here a little sand pit. I did have a sandbox, which was kind of awesome, but most of the rest of the yard space I haven't been able to reflect just because the house was so big. There didn't leave a lot of space for the rest of the yard. In my real life house, we had a pretty decent sized backyard. We had a little garden shed that we kept like the lawnmower and things like that in. And then we had at the back a raised level going to the neighbors behind us. And going up that raised level was a rock garden. So we had that, but I wasn't able to really reflect that because there just wasn't the space. I also realized, speaking of scaling, that I made the driveways way too big, but I did not have the presence of mind. Well, not the presence of mind. I didn't have the motivation to change everything that I'd built because it took so long already. Also, we need some cars that are a little like lower end. A lot of the cars seem to be like really fancy coupes, and we did not own fancy coupes, let me tell you. But anyway, we've moved on into the interior finally, and I had so much fun. As much as I struggled with getting the exterior the way that I wanted it to, I really had fun doing the interior. Oh my goodness, it brought back so many memories. And we're working here in the kitchen because I usually start with the kitchen. And I have to say, I think the kitchen turned out to be my favorite room in this entire build, even above and beyond my old bedroom. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, we had this bright, happy yellow kitchen. It was the 80s, so we had linoleum. I am not a fan of linoleum in The Sims or in real life, but it's here. And the cabinets in this little area, you can see I've used those like really tall cabinets because we had a pantry right there when you came in the side door. We also had this built-in desk, which I could have made like a built-in desk, but honestly, it was just easier just to use a regular desk. And I'm just kind of cluttering it up. You'll see that I've placed a stool because we had a stool at this desk. But of course, in The Sims, a stool is not functional with a desk. So just be aware that if you do use this build, you'll have to replace the stool with a chair if you want your Sims to be able to use that desk. But as far as the kitchen decorating goes, I kept the clutter to a minimum. My mom, at this point in time, kept a pretty uncluttered kitchen, I would say. But I do swap out that chicken statue to a different one later on. And I do also have to come back in here later because I have forgotten at this point to add our regulator clock into the kitchen, but I do add that in later. And this is just our little very simple entry hall. There wasn't very much in here, but we did have that mirror, which was really pretty. And I actually realized later when I added screenshots in that I forgot to take screenshots of the hall, but there really wasn't much of interest in there anyway, so you're really not missing out. And now we are moving into the dining room and living room, which was a combined space. You may have also noticed that I added in a food bowl in the kitchen because we did have a cat. I had a lovely, lovely ginger pussy cat named Winchester. He was named after the rifle because he used to tear around the house like a shot had gone off. So I wanted to include him, obviously, because he was an important member of our family. And I very quickly just put the dining room in. Our dining room was really simple. We had a round table with some chairs and also that paper lantern. But I struggled a little more with the living room because our sofas, you saw that I had auditioned a number of sofas, and in the end, I don't actually remember. Oh, yeah, I went with the base game sofas, but I went with kind of this more turquoise color. Our real sofas were actually a dark navy blue. And the wallpaper I've used is very similar to the wallpaper that we had, but it is a little bit more green in the game than our real life wallpaper, which, by the way, had silver foil design in it because, again, it was the 80s. So I've tried to match the sofas as well as I could, but that royal blue was just not working with the wall color. So I have adjusted the color a little bit, but my mom also had a ton of plants in here, which I'm adding in. And you'll see I have a second hutch here. In real life, this was actually a massive stereo unit with, of course, a record player. And here I'm adding in our regulator clock, and I'm just changing up the pictures a little bit better to match what we had. We had these butterfly pictures, but I thought the sunflowers were pretty similar. But going back to the stereo unit, we had this massive stereo unit, which my mom had a ton of Precious Moment collectibles on. Every year for Christmas, my stepfather would buy her a new one, and they were always themed to something important that had happened that year in their lives, which was super, super sweet. And she still has all of those precious moments, even though he stopped giving them to her after several years. But it was really hard to model that in the game. So I've just put a large hutch there with a whole bunch of like the clay statuettes to model the precious moments. And here we're in the bathroom. There was only one bathroom. This is a 3-bedroom house, but it only has one bathroom. So again, welcome to the 80s and simple living. But the bathroom, there's not really much to say. It was very simple. This is the actual layout, even though I know this is the layout I use for like every bathroom. This is legitimately what our bathroom looked like, and I'm just adding some clutter in here. But we don't stay in here for very long because, yeah, there wasn't really much to show for it. But we will be moving into my bedroom right now. This is my bedroom. This was where my bedroom was. So I had a pretty decent sized bedroom. It was pretty large actually. And I have used the really cute pastel pop wallpaper. The wallpaper I had in my bedroom on this wall was clouds with rainbows. And then I had the most obnoxious pink colored walls. I actually wanted pink and orange walls because my mother said that I could choose the color of my walls in this room, and I wanted pink and orange. And she said, absolutely not, Cindy, those colors clash. Clearly, I was ahead of my time because these days, pink and orange absolutely do go together. So there you go, Mom. I was onto something. But I'm also adding in here some furniture. The bookcase I had, my stepfather built for me, and the toy box my father built for me because he was like a carpenter construction guy. And then I had a little table with a little rocking chair. The rocking chairs in game are too big to add in here, so I just put some pillows in. And I had a whole bunch of toys. Oh my goodness, I had My Little Ponies, so many My Little Ponies. I had Care Bears. I had 3 Cabbage Patch dolls. I had a whole bunch of like Barbies, obviously, and some action figures like She-Ra and things like that. So I added some toys in there. And this is my parents' bedroom that we're working on right now as I talk about all my childhood toys. Their bedroom was pretty simple. They had a lot of, again, really large furniture, which is difficult to model in The Sims, but I have put in like a standing wardrobe and a dresser with a big mirror because my mom had giant mirrors on top of the dresser. And they also added in like an old television into the corner at one point some years into living there. So I've added that in, and this is the television from the Eco Lifestyle that you can get out of the debug menu because at this point we didn't have the basement kit released yet. But it was a smaller one that they had television wise in that room anyway. So it fit. And then this is a third bedroom. Now you'll see I've added a crib. I am an only child. I do not have any siblings, but when we lived in this house, my mom actually did some nannying work. So there were three little boys that throughout our time that we lived here, she nannied, and we had a crib in this room, even though I had no siblings. And this was also her sewing room, which is why I'm putting a whole bunch of nifty knitting things in here. It's a shame that we don't have any sewing machines in the game. I would love to see that added, but you know, the nifty knitting stuff kind of works. So this was her sewing machine room and all of that stuff. But now we have moved down into the basement. And here is where we now have the basement treasures kit. So I thought I was going to use the sofa, but in the end, the high school year one looked a little more like the Chesterfield that we had in here. But I did get the armchair from the new kit. And we have this cute little child chair because I had like a little one of those in here. And then the television I've put in here is the new retro TV from the pack. I really wanted to use the one that was in the case because I think that is more like what we had. But of course, it's not functional because that item just works as a table. So that was disappointing, I have to say. But my stepfather built a bar back in the end of the rec room here. This is what we called the rec room, the recreation room. So I've put the bar in, and you may be wondering, Cindy, what the heck are you doing? Why are you putting hats on the wall? Excellent question. My stepfather had a baseball hat collection, and they were hung along the back of the rec room wall. So I used Tool to rotate these hats from the Everyday Clutter kit and mount them on the wall. And it actually looks pretty accurate to what it was like. We also have a clock back here, and you'll notice I've put this vase. It was like a giant glass brandy sniffer that had a whole bunch of matches. Back at this point in time when we lived here, he traveled a lot and he would pick up matchbooks from wherever he traveled and put them in this giant brandy sniffer, which was on the bar. You'll see that I also have a dollhouse in here because one year for Christmas, Santa brought me a My Little Pony palace. And here I'm putting in all my Little Ponies in there, and we had a dartboard. So yeah, that's the rec room. It's dark. We spent most of the time in there. We never really used the formal living room upstairs. We just used the rec room because that's what you did in the 80s. And this is the laundry room. Very simple. We actually had a giant chess freezer in the laundry room, but we don't have anything like that in the game. So I've just put a table that presumably you could fold your laundry on, and I'm adding in the old landline telephones. And it's so funny because when I was doing the desk here originally, I was thinking, oh, I wish we had landlines in the game. And now we do. So awesome. I also had so much fun adding in all of these like scuff marks and scratches and mildewy bits into the walls here. We've got the old washing tub here. We don't have like a clothes horse in the game. My mother had a clothes horse where I've put like that shelving unit in the laundry room, but we don't have that. And this was the furnace room. But of course, we don't really have furnace rooms. I have put some pipes, and this is where the litter box is gone. So I've just made it like a storage room. My parents had a ton of these old steamer chest trunks, so I've added those in. But that's pretty much it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video and the build. A like is always much appreciated. If you're new, why not subscribe to the channel and click the bell to be notified. But that is pretty much it. I really hope that you have enjoyed seeing my childhood home. And thank you so much for watching. I'll leave you with the screenshots and have a lovely day.